If your business feels more exhausting now than it did when you were making less, I've been there. I remember looking at higher revenue months on paper and wondering why the day-to-day felt tighter instead of easier. Nothing was technically wrong, but the weight was unmistakable. If your income is rising but your business feels heavier, the strain is usually structural, not temporary. What made this confusing for me at first was that the numbers looked healthy. Clients were coming in. Cash flow was improving. From the outside, the business appeared to be doing exactly what it was supposed to do. But internally, the load kept increasing in ways that weren't obvious on a dashboard. Longer decision loops. More small dependencies. More moments where something still needed my direct attention. None of it felt dramatic on its own. Together, though, it created a kind of operational drag that was hard to ignore. In the early stages of building, this can feel normal. When you're validating an offer and finding product market fit, more income often does come with more effort. You're close to the work. You're involved in everything. The system is still forming, but there's supposed to be a shift at some point. When revenue climbs but the workload scales with it, the business is expanding activity, not expanding leverage. I didn't fully appreciate that distinction early on. For a while, I assumed heavier operations were just the price of growth. More clients should mean more responsibility. More revenue should naturally mean more complexity. That logic sounds reasonable, and for a time, it even appears true. But eventually I started noticing that some parts of the business were getting smoother, while others were getting more tangled. And the difference wasn't random. The smoother areas had structure underneath them. The heavier areas were still leaning on direct attention. That's when the pattern became clearer. If your calendar tightens every time income increases, your leverage layers probably aren't keeping pace with your revenue layers. One of the more revealing moments for me was how my emotional response to new opportunities started to change. Earlier in the journey, more demand felt energizing. Later, when the system was already carrying too much manual load, new demand started to feel complicated. Same opportunity, different internal reaction. That shift is worth paying attention to. When the structure is healthy, growth usually feels expandable. When the structure is thin, growth starts to feel like pressure. And because the revenue number is still improving, it's easy to ignore what your nervous system is picking up. I remember a stretch where the business was objectively stronger than it had been the year before, yet my days felt more compressed. Small issues required more coordination. Decisions that should have been quick started taking longer. Nothing catastrophic, just a steady increase in friction. At the time, I almost normalized it. If new income starts to feel stressful instead of scalable, your system may be absorbing growth inefficiently. Another layer that often shows up at higher income levels is coordination drag. Not the obvious kind, the quiet accumulation of moments that still route back to you. Approvals that haven't been fully delegated. Client situations that technically could run without you, but still feel safer with your oversight. Each one seems small in isolation. Together, they create weight that compounds over time. And because revenue is still trending upward, there's rarely an urgent moment that forces you to redesign the system immediately. The business appears to be working. The cash flow looks fine. So, the structural strain can linger longer than it should. Looking back, one of the most useful shifts I made was changing what I paid attention to after strong months. Instead of only celebrating the revenue jump, I started asking a quieter question. Did the system handle that growth cleanly? Sometimes the answer was yes. Other times, the next month felt noticeably tighter, which told me the system had absorbed the revenue, but not the operational load. Income growth without structural relief is one of the clearest early warnings in any business. This doesn't mean complexity disappears as you scale. Some increase in sophistication is normal and even healthy. But durable income systems tend to absorb growth more smoothly over time, not less. The operator should gradually feel more removed from constant motion, not more entangled in it. One practical way to sense where you stand is to observe how quickly your business settles after a busy period. Does the system return to a calm baseline on its own? Or does the pressure linger, requiring continued attention just to keep things steady? That pattern tends to reveal the truth faster than most dashboards. Over time, I became less impressed by raw revenue jumps and more interested in how cleanly the business could handle them. Clean growth leaves the system composed. Heavy growth leaves behind a kind of operational residue that doesn't fully clear. The goal isn't just higher income, it's income that arrives without adding proportional weight to your day. Once you start seeing that distinction clearly, your decisions begin to shift. You become more selective about adding new layers of activity. You pay closer attention to which parts of the business expand smoothly and which ones quietly create drag. And interestingly, when the architecture begins to mature properly, something else happens. Growth opportunities start feeling lighter again. Not because demand slowed down, but because the system underneath finally has room to absorb it. That's usually the inflection point. The business stops feeling like something you have to constantly hold together. It starts behaving more like a structure that can carry its own weight. And when that shift happens, higher income levels stop feeling like added pressure and start feeling like what they were meant to be: cleaner expansion. A well-built income system doesn't just grow your revenue, it reduces the weight required to sustain it.